Now, the Russia-Ukraine conflict is entering into a very volatile phase. Moscow has vowed an inevitable retaliation after the deadly drone attack in Kherson, in which 27 people, including 2 children, were killed. So as Russia and Ukraine move closer to a dangerous escalation, the US-mediated peace talks at this moment look very, very fragile. Take a look at this report.
A warning sign. Multiple explosions cloud Ukrainian skies in the dead of night. But what is coming next could be worse. Ukraine is bracing for what it fears could be Putin's revenge. It believes Russia is preparing for a large-scale assault. Ukrainian intelligence in a statement says that the new attack could cause mass casualties. The battlefield reality is already brutal. In southern Ukraine, outnumbered and outgunned, Ukrainian units are under intense pressure. Russian brigades are better equipped in larger numbers. They have captured hundreds of square kilometers in recent weeks. Kyiv admits that Russian forces have captured around 4,000 square kilometers of Ukrainian territory in 2025. Things are also grim for the Ukrainians in the north. Putin has ordered the Russian army to advance into northern Ukraine. More troops are being deployed. Moscow has crippled Zaporizhzhia with a flurry of Shahed drones. It is one of the biggest attacks on the city in the past 4 years. Russia's deadly assault comes just hours after it claimed that a Ukrainian drone attack killed over 25 people celebrating the New Year at a hotel in occupied Kherson. Moscow calls the drone strike a terrorist attack that took place in Korli, a Black Sea resort town occupied by Russia since early 2022. Ukraine's army denies targeting civilians. It says only military targets have been hit. The escalating tension comes just days after Moscow claimed that the Ukrainian military attacked President Vladimir Putin's residence in the Novgorod region. Despite Kyiv's denials, Moscow is firm. It has now handed over the proof of the Ukrainian drone attack to Washington. The spurt in fighting in the new year come at the back of peace efforts spearheaded by US President Donald Trump. But the developments on the ground point towards the war only escalating, with both sides firing on all cylinders. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Is what the situation is like on the ground. But there are some very interesting developments that are happening with respect to the Russia-Ukraine war, because remember, there are peace negotiations that Donald Trump is trying to flog, but the new year has brought with it a completely different dimension to this war. Are we still headed towards these peace talks which can bring about some kind of a ceasefire? To tell us more on this, we're joined by Ambassador Joachim Bitterlich, who's a former German ambassador to NATO and also the former European diplomatic and security advisor to the former German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. Ambassador Bitterlich, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION.
It's a pleasure as always.
All right, now, one was under the impression that because of the hectic efforts that Donald Trump has been making in order to try and bring Moscow and Kyiv, pretty much to an understanding for a ceasefire. But given what has happened in the last 48, 72 hours, do you think the possibility of a ceasefire and peace talks to continue can happen because of the attack that has been staged? One, the Russians claim on one of the official residences of Vladimir Putin, and also the deadly attack that the Ukrainians have carried out on Kherson. If Ukraine was interested in peace, do you think these attacks should have happened? Can they happen without the Ukrainian allies being aware of them?
Well, I've been skeptical from the beginning, I have to say. And when you look at the last 48 hours, it beginning with the so-called attack on the residence of President Putin, which even the CIA says clearly there's not any indication in favor. The Russians seem to look for, let's say, avoiding to enter into the real final phase of negotiations with Trump. That's the key. And when you look at the attacks of the Ukrainians the day before yesterday in the border region, a so-called civil objective, the Ukrainians have clearly stated from the beginning, we respect the norms of international humanitarian law. Our attacks are only going towards military targets. And what we see from the Russians at the same time, well, can't convince anyone. And therefore, it seems to me, I regret this very much, it's more or less an excuse of the Russians to enter into final negotiations with the Americans.
Interesting, but do you think, considering what is happening on the battlefield, where India 2025, the Russians actually made very little progress on the battlefield? Do you think there is appetite in Moscow to continue this war further? Or do you think the Russians would like to now strike a deal and take what territory that they have already acquired and then bring about some kind of a ceasefire? What do you think is likely to happen in your assessment?
Well, my assessment for the moment is the Russians are not ready to negotiate, really, for the moment. They are waiting for the moment they think it's the right one, and not that one Donald Trump is thinking, or the Ukrainians. Because it's true. On the ground, the Russians are making not real progress. It's, let's call it meter by meter, if you want.
Right.
And when you look at the attacks on both sides now of the borderline of combats, either now on Kherson or on Zaporizhzhia, and on the other side by the Ukrainians, it's just, let's say, underlining that everyone, let's say, is underlining that he is in the offensive and he is gaining.
Right.
But there's a real, it's not at all true when you look at surplace. The Russians are creating illusions there.
I think those are some of the considerations which will be looked at by the leaders as they continue their talks. Are we headed for a ceasefire, or are we headed for more weeks and months of war? We'll have to wait and watch. Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Bitterlich, for joining us.
I fear the last one. I fear your last assessment.
We'll have to see.
Okay, let's see.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador.
Pleasure as always.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.